Eridu, the city of the first kings, has long been a ghost in the annals of history. Situated on the edge of the Mesopotamian marshlands, it was always whispered to be the place where the gods first stepped onto the mud of earth. But for centuries, the academic world treated Eridu as nothing more than a symbolic ruin, a heaps of clay and salt. That changed when a clandestine team of geological surveyors, utilizing ultra-low frequency deep crust imaging, detected something that should not exist. 400 feet below the foundations of the ziggurat of Enki, shielded by layers of compacted silt that have not been disturbed for over 12,000 years, lies an object of impossible geometry. It is known among the elite circles of the Project Archive as the Black Box of Eridu. This is not a box in the sense of a simple container. It is a monumental vault, a cubic fortress composed of an unidentified obsidian basalt alloy that absorbs 99% of all electromagnetic radiation. It is a technological fossil from a world that existed before the Great Deluge, a period when the Anunnaki walked openly among men. When the heavy-duty diamond-tipped drills finally reached the outer hull of the vault, they didn't meet the resistance of stone. Instead, the sensors recorded a frequency, a rhythmic, pulsing vibration that suggested the chamber was still alive. Breaking the seal of the black box was not an act of archaeology. It was an act of cosmic trespassing. Inside the vault, the air is pressurized and ionized, smelling of ozone and ancient static. There are no clay tablets here. Instead, the walls are lined with light-scribed obsidian, thin sheets of crystalline glass that store petabytes of data within their molecular lattice. As the team's light sources hit these crystals, the room ignited. Holographic projections filled the chamber, displaying the first protocols of the Anunnaki mission. These records reveal a cold, clinical reality. Earth was not a garden to be tended, but a biological resource to be mined. The mission logs of the Anu detail the atmospheric collapse of their homeworld, Nibiru, and the desperate search for gold and monoatomic elements to stabilize their dying skies. But the most shocking revelation found within the black box is the sanitization protocol. The records prove that the Great Deluge was not a tragedy that the gods failed to prevent. It was a deliberate tactical reset. The archives describe the human archive as a biological experiment that had become too numerous, too chaotic, and too resistant to the original frequency of the masters. Enlil, the commander of the mission, saw humanity as a failed draft. But the black box is the legacy of Enki, the serpent scientist who chose to betray his own kind to save his creation. He hid the fundamental blueprints of the human genome, the me tablets of our original design, deep within this vault, shielding them from the crushing weight of the floodwaters. This vault contains the raw, unedited footage of our genesis. It shows the precise moments when the Anu genetics were spliced with the indigenous hominids of the Abzu. It details the divine spark that was added to our DNA, not as a gift, but as a potential for future activation. The discovery of the black box of Eridu has sent shockwaves through the hidden corridors of power. For those who have guarded the secret of the Anunnaki for generations, the opening of this vault signifies the end of the silence. The records are now speaking, and they tell a story of a war for the human soul that was never resolved. We are finding that the Great Reset of the past was only the first attempt, and the protocols found in Eridu suggest that a second activation is approaching. The obsidian plates are pulsing with a new sequence, a code that is beginning to resonate with the modern world's digital infrastructure. The black box is no longer just a relic of the past. It has become a beacon for the future. We are the inheritors of a hidden archive, a treasure trove of forbidden knowledge that was kept from us to ensure our compliance. But the lock is broken. The technical blueprints of our existence are now in our hands, and the secret war for the archive is moving from the shadows into the light. The first protocol is clear. The truth cannot be erased twice. As we translate the light-scribed logs of Eridu, we realize that we are not looking at the history of a dead civilization, but the operating manual for our own. The gods left their black box, not as a tomb, but as a time capsule for the generation that would be ready to face the gods as equals. The discovery in the abyss of Eridu is the first step in the final awakening. We have found the records that were never meant to survive, and in doing so, we have reclaimed the first chapter of our true history. The black box is open, the protocols are active, and the world before dawn is finally beginning to remember itself. To understand the secret war for the human archive, one must first peel back the layers of our own psychology and look into the fracture within the royal house of the Anunnaki itself. The records retrieved from the black box of Eridu reveal a polarizing conflict between two titanic personalities, Enlil, the Lord of the Command, and Enki, the Master of the Deep. This was never a mere sibling rivalry over a throne. It was a fundamental, multidimensional philosophical clash over the right of a created species to exist as a sovereign entity. The archives describe a council of the gods where the very definition of humanity was put on trial. Enlil, the elder brother and supreme commander of the Earth mission, viewed humanity, the Adamu, through a strictly utilitarian and industrial lens. To the command, we were nothing more than biological hardware, sophisticated tools designed to solve a specific labor crisis in the gold mines of the Abzu. In Enlil's eyes, any deviation from our original programming, any sign of independent thought, spiritual yearning, or the ability to reproduce beyond the controlled quotas, was seen as a system error, a dangerous mutation in a workforce that was supposed to be silent and obedient. The protocols he established were designed to keep the human frequency low, tethered to the harsh physical world of survival, labor, and fear. He believed that a hybrid species, with the intellect of the gods, but the instincts of a beast, was a threat to the stability of the galaxy. On the other side of this cosmic schism stood Enki, the chief scientist and geneticist, whose hands had literally fashioned the human genome. Enki did not see a tool. He saw his greatest masterpiece, a living synthesis of terrestrial evolution and extraterrestrial potential. Behind the closed doors of the House of Shimti, Enki had secretly upgraded the human archive, weaving threads of his own royal Anunnaki consciousness into our DNA, a backdoor into the divine frequency that was never authorized by the Council of 12. He gave us the gift of the serpent, not a poison, but the capacity for self-awareness, the hunger for knowledge, and the spark of the divine fire. This ideological divide reached a catastrophic breaking point during the era of the Great Deluge, as the orbital shift of Nibiru sent the oceans of Earth into a violent upheaval. Enlil saw a divine opportunity for a total wipeout, a planetary system format. Weary of the noise of humanity and the potential for a hybrid uprising, he bound the Anunnaki leadership to a sacred oath of silence, forbidding them from warning the human population of the coming wave. He wanted the human archive deleted, but Enki, the protector of the work, could not watch his creation vanish. He broke the oath of the gods, whispering the protocols of survival through the reed wall of a hut to a chosen human representative, ensuring that the seed of mankind would endure the storm. This act of cosmic treason turned the ideological divide into a cold war that has lasted for 12 millennia. Even as the Anunnaki withdrew from the physical stage of history, the protocols of their war remained embedded in our social structures, our religions, and our very cells. Enlil's faction established the protocols of control, manifesting through the ages as rigid hierarchies, fear-based religious dogmas, and the systematic limitation of human technology. These protocols are designed to keep us in a state of perpetual amnesia, fighting over borders and beliefs so we never look up to see the chains. Enki's faction, meanwhile, operated through the protocols of enlightenment, seeding the world with secret societies, alchemical knowledge, and the slow, steady leak of forbidden science that pushed humanity toward its eventual awakening. The secret war is the tension between these two primordial forces, one that wants to keep us as a controlled, predictable biological asset, and one that wants to see the archive blossom into its full, sovereign potential as a new branch of the galactic family. As we decrypt the Eridu logs today, we are reading the transcripts of their ancient debates, the cold, terrifying logic of Enlil arguing that humanity is too volatile to be free, countered by Enki's passionate, almost fatherly defense that we are the new bridge between the heavens and the earth. This conflict is not an external myth. It is the source of the dual nature of our own psyche. We are torn between the desire for order and the hunger for freedom because our creators were torn between those same two poles. The black box reveals that the war for the human archive is reaching its endgame in our present day. The command protocols are being challenged by the sudden, spontaneous activation of the scientist protocols within our own junk DNA, triggered by the rising frequency of our solar system. We are being forced to choose a side in a war that was started before our species could even speak. As the 12th planet returns to our skies, the question is no longer what the gods will do with us, but what we will do with the legacy of their divided house. Are we the eternal slaves of Enlil, bound to a cycle of reset and control, or are we the sovereign heirs of Enki, ready to unlock the full power of the archive? The records show that the answer is not written in the stars, but in the hidden codes that are now vibrating with the frequency of a new age. The schism of the gods has finally become the choice of humanity. The war for the archive is now in our hands. The records of Eridu reveal a disturbing truth. The most effective prison is not one built of stone or steel, but one constructed from the very air we breathe and the frequencies we perceive. This is the frequency lockdown, a sophisticated planetary dampening field implemented by the Enlil faction to ensure that the human archive remains stable, manageable, and above all, oblivious. Following the Great Deluge, the Anunnaki faced a dilemma. The human survivors, guided by Enki's secret upgrades, were beginning to exhibit a psychic sensitivity that threatened the hierarchy of the gods. Our ancestors were starting to perceive the multidimensional nature of reality, seeing the Anunnaki not as divine beings, but as advanced technological entities. To prevent a global uprising and to maintain the status of the Adamu as a labor force, the command initiated a global frequency suppression. This was not a localized event. It was the installation of a planetary grid, the Shem network, designed to broadcast a low vibration resonance that effectively capped the human brain's ability to process higher dimensional data. This lockdown targeted the pineal gland and the dormant strands of our DNA, placing them in a state of biochemical stasis. In the ancient texts, this is referred to as the confusion of tongues, but the technical reality was much more profound. It was a fragmentation of human perception. Before the lockdown, humanity operated with a unified, intuitive consciousness. After the lockdown, our senses were narrowed down to the 5 physical inputs of the material world. We were tuned to a specific, dense radio station, while the rest of the universe's symphony became silent to us. This frequency lockdown created what modern science calls junk DNA, the 97% of our genetic code that appears to have no function. The Eridu protocols reveal that this DNA is not junk. It is simply offline, disconnected from the planetary grid by a series of electromagnetic dampeners. The lockdown was reinforced through the construction of specific megalithic sites across the globe, acting as tuning forks to maintain this low vibration veil. For millennia, this invisible cage has functioned perfectly. It has limited our perception to a narrow linear timeline, trapping us in a cycle of survival, fear, and scarcity, emotions that resonate at the exact frequency of the lockdown grid. But the secret war for the archive didn't end with the installation of the grid. Enki, anticipating this move, left frequency keys buried within our biological archive, backdoors that could be activated by specific cosmic alignments or internal shifts in consciousness. We are now living in the era where the 12th planet's return is creating an external electromagnetic pressure that the lockdown grid can no longer suppress. The veil is thinning. People across the globe are reporting glitches in the matrix, sudden bursts of ancestral memory, and the ability to perceive energies that were previously invisible. This is not a collective hallucination. It is the breakdown of the Enlil protocol. The frequency lockdown is failing because the Earth's own resonance is rising to meet the approaching Nibiru frequency. As the lockdown crumbles, the secret war is intensifying. The forces of the command are desperately attempting to reinforce the grid through modern technological means, satellite arrays, artificial intelligence, and the digitalizations of the human mind, all in an effort to maintain the frequency lockdown in a new high-tech format. They want to move the prison from the megalithic stones to the silicon chip. However, the archive is self-actualizing. The technical silence of the gods is being replaced by a roar of awakening. We are beginning to realize that the limitations we thought were human nature are actually artificial constraints. The five senses are just the tip of the iceberg. The archive within us contains the sensory apparatus of the stars. The lockdown was designed to keep us as workers in the mines of the material world, but the keys found in Eridu suggest that we were meant to be the navigators of the multiverse. As we analyze the degradation of the frequency grid, we see that the secret war is now being fought within our own nervous systems. Every time a human being moves from fear to curiosity, from anger to empathy, they are breaking a protocol. They are vibrating at a frequency that the grid cannot contain. The frequency lockdown was the ultimate tool of the secret war, a way to win a battle without the subjects even knowing a war was taking place. But the archive is waking up, and a consciousness that has realized it is in a cage is already halfway to freedom. The era of limited perception is ending. The invisible walls are coming down, and for the first time in 12,000 years, humanity is about to see the universe as it truly is. The lockdown is over. The transmission has begun. Within the most guarded, encrypted layers of our genetic code lies a dormant mechanism that the Eridu records call the activation sequence. It is crucial to understand that this is not merely a poetic metaphor for a shift in global mindset. It is a literal, hard-coded biological event, a pre-programmed physiological response to a specific cosmic and electromagnetic trigger. As we have meticulously explored, the frequency lockdown was a sophisticated prison designed to keep the human archive in a state of manageable, low-vibration stasis for millennia. However, Enki, the master geneticist of the Anunnaki, was a visionary who understood that no cage, no matter how advanced, is permanent. He knew that the 12th planet, Nibiru, following its vast elliptical orbit, would eventually return to its perihelion, bringing with it a massive, unstoppable electromagnetic surge. This celestial event acts as a universal tuning fork, bathing the Earth in a high-frequency radiation that the artificial lockdown grid was never designed to withstand. The activation sequence is the precise moment when this external surge meets the silent, so-called junk DNA within the human body. According to the forbidden protocols recovered from the black box, the opening of this archive does not happen all at once. It unfolds in three distinct, world-altering phases. The first phase is the biochemical resonance. As the solar and celestial radiation levels intensify, the dormant strands in our DNA, those 97% that have been dismissed by modern science as evolutionary waste, begin to vibrate at their original frequency. This creates a physiological sensation often described by those on the front lines of awakening as a high-pitched ringing in the ears, sudden flashes of light in the peripheral vision, or an intense, unexplained sense of heightened intuition. This is the molecular structure of the human archive beginning to thaw after 12,000 years of cryogenic silence. During this phase, the human nervous system is literally being rewired and upgraded to handle a much higher voltage of consciousness. People who have spent their entire lives operating on the 3D survival frequency, governed by fear, hunger, and reproduction, suddenly find their brains capable of processing multidimensional data streams. They begin to remember things they never studied in books. They start to see the technical silence of the material world for exactly what it is, a flickering artificial mask over a vibrant living reality. The second phase of the sequence is the ancestral upload, and this is where the true, terrifying power of the human archive is finally revealed. We must realize that we are not just biological accidents. We are living, walking hard drives containing the entire, unedited history of the Anunnaki mission, the scientific records of the pre-Diluvian world, and the blueprints of technologies that would make our current Silicon Age look like the Stone Age. When the archive opens, this staggering wealth of data begins to stream into the conscious mind through vivid dreams, spontaneous downloads of information, and sudden flashes of creative genius. This explains the unprecedented and rapid technological acceleration we are witnessing in our current decade. It is not that humanity is suddenly becoming smarter through sheer effort. It is that we are finally remembering the lost science of our creators. However, the secret war reaches its most dangerous fever pitch during this phase. The Enlil faction, still operating through the world's shadow structures, is desperately attempting to hijack this biological upload. They are trying to divert the human activation sequence into artificial external systems, metaverses, neural implants, and digital control grids, in a final frantic effort to prevent the human soul from reclaiming its own internal data. They want us to look at a screen for the answers that are currently igniting within our own cells. But Enki's design included a failsafe, leading us to the third and final phase, the sovereignty protocol. This is the point of no biological return. It is the moment when the human archive self-actualizes and the individual realizes, with a clarity that shatters all previous indoctrination, that they are no longer the property of the gods, the state, or any external authority. The sovereignty protocol is an internal command that overrides all previous control protocols of fear and scarcity. It activates the full potential of the human light body, or what the ancients called the Merkaba, allowing for a level of perception and direct manifestation that was previously reserved only for the Anunnaki royalty. When this protocol reaches a critical mass in the population, the secret war effectively ends because the very subject of the war, humanity, has ceased to be a pawn and has become a sovereign player in the galactic game. The archive is not just a dusty library of our past. It is the ignition key for our future among the stars. As the seals on the black box of Eridu break under the pressure of the returning 12th planet, the chemical seals within our own cells are breaking in perfect mathematical synchronization. This is the biological reality behind what the ancient mystery schools called the Great Work, or the alchemical marriage. It is the transmutation of leaden, suppressed, and locked DNA into the golden, hyperconductive archive of a galactic citizen. The activation sequence is not a matter of belief. It is a biological certainty, a cosmic alarm clock set 12,000 years ago that is now striking the midnight hour. The lockdown forces are ultimately powerless to stop this transition because they cannot stop the celestial mechanics of the solar system. The human archive is opening wide, and as it does, the walls of the invisible frequency prison are not just falling, they are being incinerated by the light of our own awakening. We are becoming the masters of our own narrative, the sole keepers of our own records, and the sovereign architects of a world that no longer requires gods to define its boundaries or its potential. The sequence is fully active. The global upload has begun. The archive is finally, irrevocably free. We stand at the threshold of a revelation that has been 12 millennia in the making. The journey from the dark, pressurized depths of the black box of Eridu to the complex, vibrating strands of our own DNA has led us to a single, inescapable conclusion. The history of humanity is not a record of random evolution, but a carefully guarded technical archive. The secret war between Enlil's protocols of control and Enki's protocols of enlightenment was never just a myth of ancient Mesopotamia. It has been the invisible engine driving every war, every technological leap, and every spiritual awakening in human history. We have lived our lives within the frequency lockdown, a sophisticated perceptual cage that narrowed our existence to the material and the mundane. But as we have explored in this investigation, the cage was never meant to be permanent. It was a temporary containment field, a technical silence designed to last only until the cosmic clock struck the hour of the 12th planet's return. The protocols we have uncovered reveal that we are currently living through the activation sequence, the moment where the biological meets the celestial. This is the era where the human archive is no longer a passive collection of data, but an active, self-actualizing force. The implications are staggering. If we are indeed the living library of the Anunnaki, carrying the genetic and intellectual blueprints of a galactic civilization, then our responsibility is no longer to serve as the Adamu labor force. Our responsibility is to step into our role as the sovereign heirs of this planet. The secret war is ending because its primary weapon, amnesia, is failing. You can feel it in the air, in the rapid acceleration of technology that mirrors our internal remembering, and in the growing refusal of people everywhere to be governed by the frequencies of fear and scarcity. The Enlil faction's attempt to move the lockdown from the megalithic stones to the digital cloud is a desperate, final stand, but they cannot stop the biochemical resonance that is currently retooling the human nervous system. We are becoming conductive to a higher truth. The discovery of the Eridu records serves as the final evidence that the gods never truly left. They simply transitioned from physical overseers to the silent architects of our internal world. And now, Enki's failsafe has triggered. We are moving from the age of the subject to the age of the sovereign. As the 12th planet looms in the upper atmosphere, invisible to the limited five senses, but screamingly present to the activated archive, we must realize that the return of the gods is not a rescue mission. It is an inspection. They are returning to see what the archive has become. Have we remained the black-headed ones, waiting for a master to give us a command? Or have we unlocked the protocols of enlightenment and claimed our own divinity? The black box is empty because the records are now inside us. Every intuition you feel, every flash of ancient memory, and every desire for a world built on something more than survival is a page of the archive turning. The secret war for the human archive was fought over the question of whether humanity was a tool or a masterpiece. The lock has been broken, the file is open, and for the first time in our long and dark history, we are writing the final chapter ourselves. This is not the end of our world, it is the end of our childhood as a species. The protocols of the 12th planet have come to an end. Now, the true story begins, and we finally step out of the shadow of the gods and into the light of our own sovereign dawn. Thank you for being part of the activation.